The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When Jesus was in one of the towns, there was a man covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." Then Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him, and said, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately, the leprosy left him, and Jesus ordered him to tell nobody. "Go," he said, "and show yourself to the priest, and, as Moses commanded, make an offering for your cleaning, for a testimony to them." But now, more than ever, the word about Jesus spread abroad. Many crowds would gather to hear him and be cured of their diseases. But he would withdraw to deserted places and pray. The gospel inspired by God. I will always remember my first encounter with leprosy. It was 1973, and I was living in a mission in Kenya called Eldama Ravine. And it was a huge, big, sprawling parish. There were about 40 outstations. And sometimes I'd be in a mass safari that would take me 60 or 70 miles from the home base. And so I'd circumambulate these on a monthly basis, saying mass in each location once a month. And there was one outstation particularly, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it right now, and it was on the loop of a river. There was a river that looped, and right in the center of the loop was this huge, gigantic tree, and that was the church. So they created benches around the bottom of this tree. And the benches consisted of logs that came from the tree, and then they would put poles in the ground, forked poles like this, just branches, forked, and they'd put a log between the two, and that was the seat. So there were seats around the whole thing. And then typically before I'd say Mass there, I'd be hearing confessions. So they'd get a chair someplace from somebody in the village who had a chair, and the chair would be situated maybe 100 meters from the church. And I'd sit in the chair, and so I'm sitting here in the chair, and the penitents would come up and just kneel here beside me, and make their confession. So this particular night, it was Holy Saturday night, so it's pitch dark, it's midnight, and I'm saying Mass in this outstation. And so I'm sitting in my chair, and somebody has put a storm lantern in the tree, so there's some bit of light around where I am. And people are coming up and making their confessions. And all of a sudden, this person came up in front of me, knelt right in front of me, and plopped his elbows down on my knees, and his hands up in front of his face. And I looked at him, and I realized he had no fingers, he had no nose, and he had one ear. It was my first encounter with leprosy. We subsequently became really, really, really good buddies. So I want to talk this morning about illnesses of various kinds, and the origin of illnesses, and the healing of illnesses. And so I'm of the opinion that illness is a 6-factored equation. I call it AX1 plus BX2 plus CX3 plus DX4 plus EX5 plus FX6 equals illness. And these are the 6 factors. X1 for me has to do with genetic predisposition. And so different tribes of people have different predispositions toward different kinds of illnesses. Particular kinds of illnesses seem to run in particular tribes. And then within a tribe, particular families are more predisposed to heart disease or, cancers or whatever. So within the tribe, you've got different family members. And then each member, even within a family, will have particular kinds of weaknesses. Every one of us has a weak point, and that's where the illness typically will strike. So the first factor is genetic predisposition. The second one then is environmental influence. And by environment, I mean everything from the in utero experience of the little developing embryo. Already right there, it's being, the environment is going to create predispositions toward illness. And then, of course, when we're born, the quality of the household in which we live, the food that's available, whether we're living in a toxic dump like little kids in a garbage pile in Guatemala, or we're living in a pristine environment or whatever. So environmental factors are very, very important in illness. The third piece then would be personal lifestyle. So the quality of the food I'm eating, whether I'm exercising, getting enough sleep or whatever. So the way in which I'm living my life is a third factor. And then the third piece has to do with personal belief systems. A lot of illnesses are of psychosomatic origin, or they're amplified, or accelerated, or healed by psychosomatic factors. So the quality of our thinking, how we think about life, and even how we think about an illness is a huge factor. The fifth one for me is karma, that we take on particular illnesses for particular lifetimes in order to learn particular kinds of lessons. So sometimes an illness is of karmic origin. Not that we're being punished for stuff we did in previous incarnations, but we've chosen to take a spacesuit which is going to have particular kinds of predispositions in order to learn particular kinds of lessons. And the sixth piece then for me would be what I would call the bodhisattva dimension. In Buddhism, there's this notion that there are some enlightened beings who don't need to reincarnate anymore. They've worked off all their own personal karma, but they keep coming back for the rest of us in order to raise up the rest of us. Now, I think that every single one of us has some of the bodhisattva in us, to the extent that we can act lovingly or think not just of ourselves but the other. We're acting out the bodhisattva vow. So sometimes we accept illnesses in order to lighten the load of a community in some way. So for me, these are the 6 factors. Now, the interesting thing is, the first 2, science can work with. Science can get a handle on genetic predispositions by looking at the DNA and our chromosomes. It can look at environmental factors and help us, clean up the environment if it chooses to do it. So the first 2, can be handled by science, properly understood. The second 2, number 3 and number 4, are totally within our own power. If the illness is primarily of, around personal lifestyle or personal belief systems, we have total control over healing ourselves of that illness. And if the illness is number 5 or number 6, it's about our soul. So the first 2 are about science, the second 2 are about the self, and the third 2 are about the soul. If it's karmic or if it's bodhisattva, it is not going to change. This is what you've accepted and signed up and volunteered to do in a particular incarnation. So if it's the first 2, science can help you. If it's the second 2, you can help yourself. And if it's the third 2, this is what you've signed up to do, and no amount of prayer or medical interventions is going to make a difference. Because there's a big difference, in my opinion, between the etiology of an illness and the purpose of an illness. Etiology just had to do with the physical circumstances or the biochemical concatenation of circumstances that resulted in a particular illness. That's the etiology. But there's another part of illness, and it is the purpose of the illness. The why. Not why did it happen, but why did I accept it, or why did I sign up for it? So it becomes very, very important not just to consider the etiology, but to consider the purpose. In the course of my soul's evolutionary trajectory, what is the purpose for which, I've accepted this particular illness? And then I believe there's a 6th factor about healing oneself. If it's of your own, if it's coming from the self, how do you go about curing an illness? And for me, again, there are 6 stages to this process. And the first stage is meditation. When I've been diagnosed or self-diagnosed with some kind of an illness. The first thing is, I want to take it to meditation. And I want to ask myself this question: what is the purpose of this illness? And what is the etiology of this illness? Is this a genetic predisposition? Is it environmental influence? Is it the way I'm living my life? Is it my thought pattern? Is it karmic? Is it bodhisattva? So I'm trying to establish both the etiology and the purpose of this particular illness. And I take it to meditation. Once I think I've established what the course is, I now take it to prayer. I'm going to pray in order for the illness to be lifted or ameliorated in some fashion. If I've discovered it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, I will pray for that. The third piece is I have to consult with professionals, people who have expertise in dealing with these kinds of things. So, and I have to start making lifestyle changes and mental changes in order to make it possible for me to heal from this illness. That would be stage 3. Stage 4 is, once I've done 1, 2, and 3, I have to temporarily detach from the outcome. I've figured out what it is. I've prayed for it. I've done my darndest, and now I have to work with the outcome. Whatever the outcome is, I have to work with the outcome. Even if it's not the final outcome, it may be a temporary outcome, but it is an outcome at the moment. I have to work with that and not just curse my luck and berate God for sending me this illness. So I have to go work with it. The 5th one is, I now take it back to meditation in order to fine-tune what the etiology and what the purpose is. because I've done it first, I prayed about it, I've done my darndest, I've detached from it, now I'm getting more feedback. The feedback is going to make it easier for me to determine what is the origin of this illness. And the sixth piece, possibly the most important one of all, is the realization that I cannot lose. Whatever the outcome is, I cannot lose. If I've done my part of it, I've figured out what it's about, I've done my praying, I've had the interventions from the medical community or the psychotherapeutic community, whatever, I've detached from the outcome, I've done my part. Whatever the end result of the illness is, I cannot lose. Because I am not my body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my intellect, I'm a bite-sized piece of God having a human experience. And if I've done my part for it, then I can rest assured that whatever the outcome is exactly the outcome that my soul planned. Guys, Marjorie.
It's hard to accept it, that this is. I don't think I've ever gone through any of those steps.
Okay. Today is the day, Marge. Gee. Okay.
And she wants to die now. She's asking for the tumor to grow. She wants to die. She's had enough.
This is the 12-year-old child?
No, she's 9,
9
or 10, something like that. My question is, what do we pray for her? How do we best support her in this journey? And I don't know. I mean, when I read that she wanted to die and that she's asking to die, and she's gone through intense pain. But yet I do believe in my heart of hearts, kind of like what you said, she's here for a purpose. She's teaching us lots of stuff. And I guess what I'm grappling with is, what's the prayer?
That's brilliant. My heart goes out to her when I hear this. And so for me, it amplifies the second factor here, that illness often is of an environmental origin. And by environment, all the circumstances surrounding the little child. Without knowing anything about this family, I don't know anything about them whatsoever, but I'm speaking just theoretically now, that very, very often a child is actually the symptom of a system, of an entire family system. And so the illness that a child is manifesting, whether it's a psychological condition or a physiological condition or a sociological condition where a child is acting out, very, very often is actually acting as the symptom on the body of the family. And so it wouldn't surprise me if in some senses, that what the child is going through actually is some kind of a symptom representing a dysfunction on the family system. Now, whether the little girl herself is aware of this, stuff, and that's part of her wanting to give up, I don't know that. But I know that all prayer should be for what Ingrid Falk, who comes to Mass the third Sunday, calls the MBO, the most benevolent outcome. And this is the prayer that Jesus is making, the Our Father, thy will be done. So it's not about us trying to impose our tiny little perception of the purpose of the illness on the system, but asking what is God's, when we planned this incarnation with God, what did we have in mind? And so my prayer always was always with the caveat that whatever aligns me most with my mission and with what I volunteered for and what God wants of me. And I would say the same thing at this stage. If she's fulfilled her mission and demonstrated what she came to do, maybe the proper outcome at this stage is to let her go, want to let herself go. And so it always has to be in alignment with God's purpose, because we see a tiny percentage of the reasons for an illness, and therefore for us to impose a solution without being privy to the many factors that we're not aware of is very, very foolhardy. And so my prayer for her today would be the MBO, the most benevolent outcome, that whatever her contract is and whatever serves the bigger system best to bring them into alignment, that's what we would pray for. Yeah. Margaret.
I often think when I'm praying and having feelings of empathy and sadness for other people's problems, that it's really hard to get your ego out of the way. And it's hard to have courage, and especially if it's prolonged, protracted. And You know, sometimes my prayers are not very nice. You know, talk about leer and raging. But you know, in my more rational moments, or not rational, I mean more elevated moments, I can see that. It's really hard though. I mean, that's why I pray for all of us, because we all suffer that.
So it's interesting to me when I hear you say in your most elevated moments, because I think you can't get really angry with somebody you're not close to. You know, the people you get most angry with are the people you're most close to. So the fact that you can get angry with God already tells me that you're very close to God. You can't get angry with somebody you don't believe exists, for instance. Yeah, you can't get angry with God if you don't believe God exists. So the very fact that you can get angry with God tells me there's a personal relationship there. And it is a very important part of a relationship that we can get mad with people. You know, if we can't trust somebody to get mad with them, you know, we can't trust them. So getting mad with God is a great sign, the fact that we take God really seriously, and God is very important in our lives. So I would say your elevated moments are times when you feel at peace with God and times when you're really angry with God. But you're absolutely right that, you know, God obviously has a perspective which is infinitely greater than and sees infinitely more components of the situation than we say. I've shared this story with you a few times before. In Ireland in the 1950s and 1960s, there was a huge project called the Rural Electrification Scheme, where they were trying to bring electricity to the kind of the hinterland, the areas away out in Connemara and West Cork. And I had a grand-aunt who lived in the western part of Galway, a very, very remote area. She lived with her son. They grew their own food. They had their own cattle. They made their own butter. They baked their own bread. They killed their own livestock. They grew their own, you know, vegetables, totally self-sufficient. And the only light they had was candles. They were living in this little two-room, you know, little hut, and they had candles for light. And then this rural electrification scheme's coming through, and they're bringing electricity, you know, to the bush. And I go up there the next summer, and I called her Aunt Mag, although she was my grand-aunt, and there's this one light bulb hanging in the middle of the sitting room. And I said to Aunt Mag, how do you enjoy the electricity? And she said, it is grand entirely. Grand entirely. I do light it every evening when I'm looking for the matches to light the candle. And that's exactly what she did. It got dark, she turned on this light, ferreted around, found the candle, the matches, lit it up, stood the candle, and then turned off the light, because this thing costs money. And it became a great image for me that we have this electrical power available to us that could bring instant light all over. We insist on using candles. So God is like the electrical light, infinite power available to us, but we insist that, no, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to light my candle, I'm going to turn off the electricity and light my candle. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to voice my solution on this situation. Yeah. Jojo.
In the mountains of El Salvador, there were several villages with one rustic clinic, and the doctor there was also a Catholic nun, Dr. Ann McNamara, and she often would deliver babies and what have you. And there was one infant that, well, I'll wait to the end to tell you what happened. But when she delivered the baby was fine in the morning. And it gave her tremendous joy when she's delivering this baby and cleaning her up and handing it to the mother. But by nighttime, the baby had passed. And so a lot of people in the village, because she was a nun as well as a doctor, said, how could this have happened? What is the whole point of 9 months of long pregnancy and a beautiful birth, and then the baby dies? So when Ann McNamara wrote her first book, about what it was like to be a medical doctor up in the rustic hills of Central America, she dedicated the book to the baby. And she named the baby, and she said, whose purpose for me was to give me great joy in the morning, but also broke my heart at night. And so she found purpose for that baby's one day, which I thought was beautiful.
That's beautiful. I don't think we have any appreciation of the complexity of the contracts we make as souls together and how we impact each other. Even a brief, a 12-hour existence out of the womb, the impact that has on a village, on this sister, and the mother, obviously, and the villagers, what it causes us to think about, to do, to change. Or we can't judge a person's effectiveness on their longevity,
No, I never met the baby.
exactly.
I
You've
carry
been
that
impacted by
story.
it.
I carry that story to you,
Totally.
and that maybe you'll remember it too.
Excellent.
So that baby has a ripple effect.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think like we're like neurons on a cosmic brain. Every creature, not just all human beings, but everything that exists, we're like neurons on a cosmic brain. And the great power of the human brain is not so much that it contains about 10 million neurons, but that each of the neurons is capable of forging connections with all of the others. So there's almost an infinite number of possible circuits that can be established with these neurons. So that the connections we have, even to people we've never met, just the stories we've heard this morning, this already connects us to teachings that these people have come to deliver to us.
To that little baby that we were envisioning, I mean, I had goosebumps when she was
Good.
talking about the baby.
Okay. So there's a child who died years and years ago, thousands of miles away, that's affecting you today. Yeah. Yeah. So that's part of the baby's contract.
And how so wonderful for us to be sharing with each other. This is why I think Friday service is so wonderful, because we're so intimate with each other,
absolutely.
and we share our joys and our sadness and our
Brilliant.
It's very powerful. Sorry.
Carolina.
I was just going to say something to what you just said about the interconnectedness of everything. So sometimes we get a glimpse of that when we end up someplace, and then we can go back. Every once in a while we get a glimpse of all the steps that it took us to get there. And all the things that, I mean, really a wide reach of people or places or circumstances. And you have this kind of humbling sense of, how could all that have happened just to bring me, this one little person here? But it's like there's this infinite energy that allows that, and it is one big effort. We're not individual little things. And so there's no limit to the amount of effort that can be expended. And everyone is completely worthy of all of it. And it's just every once in a while, there's just this little glimpse of, wow, 10 steps back, years, generations, whatever. This is all was for this little thing that seems so small, but how would you have gotten there otherwise?
Brilliant. So it reminds me of, did you ever do your family tree, your genealogical chart? And I look at it and think, how does a narcissist look at the family chart? And the narcissist says, all right, all these ancestors conspired just to focus and to produce me. So it's like a V-shaped, that's the whole point of a genealogy. The other narcissists say, look at me, I'm the progenitor of all these people who are going to come after me. I got these number of kids, and these number of grandkids, and these number of great kids. Look, it all started with me. And the third kind of narcissism is like, look, it's all leading to me and from me. I'm at the center of this piece. But the truth is, when you look at a real family chart, that you're abstracting just some kind of a pattern from something which is an infinite series of circuits, all of whom are connected to everybody else. Everybody on the planet, in some senses, is connected to everybody on the planet. If you were to bring the family tree back far enough, we're all connected in some fashion. So it's not V-shaped, it's not delta-shaped, it's not this wasp-shaped, it's this entire mattis, of interconnected circuits of neurons on the brain. And so the truth is that everybody, everywhere, doing anything, is affecting everybody else, any place else, doing something else. Yeah.
She was saying about the broad cloth. You have to have threads to make the cloth.
Right, exactly.
So I was thinking, we are all the threads that we are all intertwined to make.
Awesome.
The cloth.
Great image, Marge.
Huh?
Great image. Great image. Yeah. All the threads that make the cloth. Fabulous.
So I'm thinking, I'm a thread. Sometimes I'm red and sometimes I'm black.
When you buy a pair of sheets, what is the number of, what's the count?
That's right, 300 threads.
Thread
300.
is, yeah.
Like per square inch or
300.
1,500.
Yeah, something. There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
soft you want it.
Interesting. So there's your image right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that even in a, making a
The
little
more
sheet.
threads, the more threads, the better
Yeah.
it is.
Right, the higher the
Yeah.
that's true.
That's
the higher the
good.
quality,
Higher
the
the-
better.
The stronger it
That's
is, fewer threads, the
Yeah. I mean, I just learned this not too long ago.
That's a great image, Marge. Great image. People are skiing on it.
Yeah, 500 per square inch and
So I have I had a dark shadow of me not too long ago. Our son's neighbor passed away, and they adored her. You know, she was a little old lady and had no kids, and she adored Jeff and the kids. And I used to tell her, they always invited her, and Jeff would take her garbage out and pick up her. You know, he was really like, he always told the kids she's like another grandma.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, Emily passed away right before Christmas, and we were going to go to San Francisco. Diane had it on the train. We do that every year, and we go out for brunch and on a Monday. And Jeff called me and he said, "Mom," he said, "Emily's memorial has been moved from Tuesday to Monday." And I thought, oh no, you know, this has been, and I said, but the first word that came out of my mouth was so terrible. I said, "She's dead anyway, we can't do anything." Because I was thinking if Diane had made the reservation like 2 weeks early or 3 weeks earlier, and you know, a couple of days before Christmas, you're not going to have place for 11 people to show up to eat. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, and I was telling the kids that was Nana's dark shadow, what Father Seán talks about. And then at the same time, I said, "Of course we have to go. Of course Dad and I are going to come to the memorial, you know." And Diane was able to move it to another day. But I thought, oh God, that was really dark shadow. That
I'm
came
glad
out
you're
of my
human like the
mouth.
rest of us, Margie.
Huh? What is it?
I'm glad you're human like the rest of us.
Oh my God, it was so, but I wanted, and I told my grandkids, because I wanted them to know that it's okay to have a dark shadow.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, you know, that
It gives you
part of life.
it gives you three-dimensionality.
Yeah. Well, they already know I'm kind of quirky.
Experienced that before. They have experienced that before.
Okay.
Great, guys. Let's stand up, pray.